Hey guys, thanks for joining tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
I don't think I've ever met or seen in person either of you, but you guys reached out to do an interview for the Facebook group that I moderate, Millburn Local Politics, and I appreciate you doing that because when I founded or started the page 3 or 4 years ago, the purpose was hopefully to give candidates and people in town in general a forum to talk politics. And Millburn, happy Millburn, often doesn't like a lot of political discussion because it tends to get sort of adversarial, maybe, or people get a little angry, and so they put a governor on that, which kind of makes sense for what they're trying to do. But I wanted to have a forum where people could talk more politics and debate and stuff. Um, so some candidates have taken advantage of it over the last several years, but not that many. So I'm happy that you guys did reach out to connect.
Sure.
Um, so thank you for that. So why don't you well, just a little bit about me. I'm about a 20-year resident in town. I live here with my wife Nikki and my son Kyle. He just became a senior. I grew up in Summit, so I made it maybe about 3 miles away, ultimately. So I'm sort of a local guy. I'm a lawyer. I work in New York, do a lot more work at home now because of telecommuting. I work for a small firm in the city, but now I've spent I commute a lot less than I used to, which sort of has, I think, which is true, I think, for a lot of people in town. I think it has an impact on real estate, on the schools, on commuting, on traffic, etc. But why don't each of you just give me a little bit of background about who you are and why you want to run? Maybe Jamie, you're on the left. Why don't we
Sure.
start with you?
Let's do it. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having us. And hello, Millburn Short Hills. I'm Jamie Ceruto. I'm a lifelong Millburn Short Hills resident. My father grew up in town. I'm a third generation resident now. And this was a really special place to grow up, right? My father was one of seven. We all stayed within the area. My mother grew up in Morris Plains. And so, this area of the state has been home. And home in many different ways. More than 20 members of my family have gone through Millburn High School. I'm a proud Millburn High grad. Served as class president there, and ultimately, Millburn isn't just where I'm from, right? It's where my roots are. I took advantage of the opportunities that were around me, all throughout my time at Millburn, and now obviously as a professional. I was honored to be elected as the youngest elected official in New Jersey, became a Board of Education member, serving the district that I attended and literally at the time. And
If
I've
I
given
can
my
interrupt,
time.
that's where I first knew your name. You were in high
Yep.
school and served as an elected, a general member of the Board of Education, not like the student liaison to the Board of
Nope.
Education, but a full serving member. And I think you got some notoriety because of that. And that was a great campaign you ran. Um, can you tell us
Yeah.
just a little bit more about that specific experience?
Sure. It was an incredible experience, especially having hands-on, leadership within the district, being a servant leader, listening, having to be very detail-oriented, reading, serving on committees such as finance and buildings and grounds and curriculum, being involved with, obviously from not a direct standpoint, but negotiations, personnel, really, really awesome. And it taught me, obviously, you get elected and the next morning, you get excited, there's notoriety, but you got to get to work. And that's what I did. So whether it be working on start times, whether it be working on access, whether it be working on improving our buildings and grounds, right? And it was during the virus as well. So, you come upon a time where, there's so much uncertainty. Families just want to get back into the classrooms, or they want to, remain at home and they want to be safe and still get the top quality education.
What
So
years were those, if I can interrupt, that you served?
I served 2020 till to the January 2023. So I served 3 years. I served full term, and that was the most incredible experience, especially being a Millburn High grad, right? And being, the number one district. I still argue that we're number one no matter what. But beyond the board, I've continued, whether it be Rocktoberfest, which is coming this Saturday, the 13th. I hope, as we're recording now, I hope everybody joins us in the park. whether it be as president of the 4th of July committee, on the Memorial Day committee, whether it be the winter walk, winter celebration, whether it be helping at St. Rose of Lima or at all the houses of worship, whether it be at the rummage sale. I'm a proud Eagle Scout, member of the Sons of the American Legion. So my activity and my engagement in the community has really touched upon almost every corner. And that's really what, pushed me to run for the township committee, because I understand a lot of the key facets of this community. My family's been here a long time, but I'm also seeing things from a young angle.
And just quickly, what year did you graduate from Millburn High, and then what did you do after?
I graduated in 2020,
Okay.
and I went to Fordham University in New York City. While I was at Fordham, I remained on the Board of Education, and I got more involved in my state. I'm a public policy consultant, and I really focus on, trying to make communities better, look at, unique and creative solutions. I'm very passionate about transportation in particular, which is why, we're going to be talking about traffic and talking about a lot of key, issues. I came back. I never left. I've always been a resident here, and I've always showed up early, executed, and stayed late. That's how I describe all of my
Hey,
work.
I know your name as well, I think, because is it your brother who is in the Yankee system as a catcher now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I am. He is my brother.
Okay.
But Peter is the bullpen catcher. We're big Yankees fans. I love Met fans too. Let me be very clear. My father was a longtime Met fan too. But we are involved there.
I
And
mean, my son played a ton of Millburn Short Hills youth baseball. It's a great club,
yeah,
one of the best things in town. So what we
great little
knew
club.
his name from that, and your name from service on the board. Thanks for that introduction. Let's move to
Yep.
Chris. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. As I understand it, you're currently, I guess, the president of the Board of Education. Is that right?
Yeah, I am. But first and foremost, I'm a family man. I've been in Short Hills about 15 years. Lovely wife Rainbow. It's actually our anniversary, 20th anniversary tonight. So we have
Oh my
agreed to
God, and you're
celebrate on the
talking to me?
weekend. So I am not in the doghouse for taking this interview on this evening. So all that's okay. I have three wonderful kids: Reagan, who just went off to Virginia Tech; Kennedy, who's a first year in high school; and Madison, who's in 8th grade. So you may notice the presidential theme of their names, and they're actually all from different political parties, which kind of speaks well to the broad-based coalition we're trying to build here at Vote for Millburn. I started it a long time ago. So
Reagan, Kennedy, and Madison. That's commitment.
And oddly, my wife is not really a political person, and she's the one who kind of started and kept going with this trend. I was like, okay, whatever you want to do, that's fantastic by me. So, my experience is really in the business world. I spent 20 years running finance teams for digital advertising and technology companies. It's a great experience. I was a senior finance executive, CFO in a couple of cases, got to run all sorts of things: finance, accounting, treasury, tax, legal, risk management, human resources. So it's just a wealth of experience. Many of these companies were global, so I got to handle subsidiaries and all throughout Europe, Canada, Korea, Japan, Australia, development teams in India and Ukraine. So it's just such a good experience. And I think I can bring that wealth of knowledge and particularly deep strategic planning, long-term planning to the township committee.
All right. And what's your term on the Board of Ed? And how does that relate to your current
three-year term? It'll finish in December, January, end of this year. And if I am elected, it should be a seamless transition. The ending of my Board of Ed should coincide with the starting of my township committee. So
all right.
Hopefully that all works out. Just a few other points to mention. I actually served in the military a long time ago. I joined ROTC to pay for college, and served a couple years active, a couple years, or about 6 years in the reserves. So that was fantastic. And if you'll allow me to talk about the Board of Ed experience.
Please, yeah, no, I think that everybody is interested in that. What's going on there now, and how does it relate to maybe what you want to do with the township committee?
It's
Yeah,
extremely timely.
Millburn has been highly rated. A recent poll just came out where, we were rated number 12 or something like that, but everyone above us was restricted admission, so more magnet type schools. So we're the highest public high school in the state. So that is fantastic. One of the challenges was I don't know that we were evolving fast enough and other schools were catching up to us. When COVID happened, colleges stopped looking at SAT scores and went test optional. So what the main factor to determine college admissions became the number of advanced placement courses you took and your GPA. And Millburn was actually lower on those metrics than other schools. The rigor our school is very high. It seemed like the standard was, oh, you're very proficient in this class. That's a B. Whereas in other schools, that was an A. So when our kids were applying for college, they started getting beat out by some other schools. So we worked a lot to rectify that situation, and I think we've made some positive changes. It had the benefit of reducing the stress on our students, and they've been very happy about that. So I feel very good about where the school district is today. There's still a lot of work that can be done, and it's a never-ending race to be number one. Everyone's trying to catch us, so unless we power ahead, we will get passed up. But I feel very confident that the board can do that. And when I looked around town, I actually saw that the biggest threat to our schools was coming from the town level. And there's a clear need for leadership at the town. I'm not one to put myself out there. I'm happy to work in the background, but if there's a need, I will step up. And I think that's what I'm doing here.
I'm sorry, you said the biggest threat to leadership was the town level. Is that what you said? Or
No, the biggest threat to the schools
the threat to the schools? I'm
is
sorry.
coming from the town. We're looking at overdevelopment in our town, which could bring more students, which could pressure the schools,
Okay.
traffic,
Sure,
pedestrian
sure.
safety. There is lots of issues that will impact our schools. And to me, schools are the number one determinant of home value, whether you have kids in the system or you're an empty nester or a retiree.
Yeah.
The schools still need to be strong to protect your home value. So everyone in this town should continue to care about how well our schools are doing.
I think most people would agree on that. So yeah, let's move on to sort of some of the issues. One that obviously relates to that is the ongoing affordable housing debate. One of the issues that first got me sort of involved in local politics was trying to figure out this crazy affordable housing mandate that New Jersey has, originally created by the Mount Laurel Supreme Court decision in, I think it's 1974, that imposes an obligation on each town to meet its sort of allocable share of affordable housing needs that's defined by a formula that very few people understand. And it creates a lot of pressure in towns like Millburn's to allow for the development of multifamily housing. And traditionally, towns like Millburn and similar suburbs have been sort of single family housing, and there's the pressure now to allow multifamily housing. And it sort of combines with pressure that comes from developers. Developers want to build multifamily housing, and they can do it if they allocate a share to affordable. Developers want to build market rate affordable, market rate non-affordable, or market rate multifamily housing. Market rate multifamily housing with a slice of affordable housing to qualify for zoning variances, which creates a lot of pressure. What do you guys think about that issue, and how do you think the town can handle it if you're elected to the township committee?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that question. As we've gone around door to door, talked to residents, and we've literally knocked on hundreds of doors already. The number one issue that is discussed with residents is overdevelopment in our town. I mean, simply put, our opponents support people who favor high density housing in places where it just does not make sense, like Millburn. We will continue to fight over development. We want to grow this town. There is a responsible way to do that. So to talk about affordable housing, it's hard not to understand the history of it. So maybe I'll bring up a few points in the history of affordable housing just to illustrate some of the points and how we deal with this. Yeah, post Mount Laurel, back in round one and round two of affordable housing, um, Millburn really wasn't affected. We were considered a fully developed town. Our obligations could be met by regional allowances, and the obligations were never really that clear. So we were okay with kind of the status quo. Come 2015, when round three started, the township committee at the time, they actually proactively approved the Upton development. That's the one out by Short Hills. I think it ended up about 200 units with 30 being affordable. We didn't have an obligation at that time. The thought was that the Upton would satisfy our round three obligation. So it was very good for the township committee to get ahead of the game there. Now, if you'll excuse me for a minute, I'm going to kind of get into party labels, not to be partisan, but just to illustrate a point. In 2017, the Democrats took over the township committee. Cheryl Burstein, Diane Igloo, they started negotiations with the Silverman Group on the 85 Woodland project. You know, that's all fine and good. 2018, negotiations broke down. In April of that year, I think it was April 16th, Silverman Group filed a builder's remedy lawsuit. The township of Millburn filed their plan 3 days later. They were 3 days late. This single event was the Pandora's box that opened us up to much more affordable housing when it didn't have to. So the next couple years are less clear to me of what was going on. What is clear, in July 2021, a special session of the Township Committee was called. The sole item on the agenda was the approval of the housing plan. 3 big surprises jumped out of this. One was the now infamous town dump at 9 Main Street.
Yeah.
Right? I hope everyone has heard of this. 75 units, 100% low income units on top of probably toxic material. I would have trouble raising my family there. I don't know why Millburn thought low income individuals would be okay raising families there. But beyond that, the financials behind this are very concerning. The agreement essentially is a blank check to the developer. The developer listed, oh, this project may cost $50 million. The taxpayers could be on the hook for 50, whatever it costs to build this thing. If there's environmental cleanup, we could be on the hook for another $10 million. And the best part, no risk to the developer. They sold this prime piece of real estate for $1. I hope I'm explaining it right, because I just cannot believe this fact set.
And this never had to be built. This never had to be included into our plan. This never had to be done this way. You know, that is what is so mind-boggling about this, whether it be this or whether it be the Woodmont project, which was also included. You know, the developer.
Yeah, let me get to that point. So I had 3 surprises in this agreement of 2018. So it was the dump, it was the Annie Says projects, and another project called Woodmart, which is, I believe it's owned by the water company. It's out on JFK Parkway and it's protected lands. But, you know, apparently if there's a bigger cause, we can push aside environmental regulations. So there's a couple other projects that got negotiated too, like the Hearth, which is not controversial. All in all, round 3, we ended up with 735 units. 194 of which were affordable. To the point Jamie was making, this is multiples of what our obligation should have been.
Yeah.
The Upton, again, 200 units, 30 affordable, plus you get some other credits for that. That should have satisfied our obligation. So the Democrats had turned over a little bit here. This was Maggie Miggins, Tara Pulpus driving these negotiations. Annette Romano, who will claim she never voted for any of this, was complicit. As Democratic Party chair, she put all of these people in a position to vote this way. Romano, Cohen, the Democrats, they crowed about turning the township committee blue. They lauded that it was their turn to do this. So to be clear, I am not criticizing the Democratic Party writ large. I am criticizing these Democrats and pointing out the problem with one party control. And I hope a later question we can talk about nonpartisan elections. So I know I said a lot of partisan stuff there, but as I said in the outset, that was not my intent. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean, overall on that issue, I think it's, there is a significant litigation leverage that developers have because of this, ongoing Mount Laurel obligation. And they can resort to the court system, which they've done. So it really, places an ongoing bind on our town and to figure
it
out how to
does, but
best
like
navigate it.
the Upton, that first one, the township committee at the time worked with the developer. They came up with those numbers. There was no builder's remedy lawsuit coming out of that. So
Right.
if
But they were
negotiated
about to file.
properly,
I think
The,
they were
the truth
just about to file.
the truth is that this dump project did not have to go as far as it's gone, right?
Well,
And
that was my
thanks to the
surprise.
leadership
It was
of Frank and
announced
Ben.
with very little input because they wanted to reach a settlement at that time because of the status of litigation, and so they did a settlement that really had not been vetted, was my
It was
experience.
never vetted. And I remember, Tom, you had put a whole report together. Annette and Michael didn't try to stop it once it was approved, right? RPM was selected as the developer, right? Which has been a hurdle within these lawsuits. And thanks to the leadership, we're on the vote for Millburn too. Frank and Ben worked diligently, to continue to fight this, right? If RPM wasn't selected as the developer, if there was any kind of, leadership in the last several years, we would not have gotten to this place, right? The developer had no rights in our town, right? The developer had no rights. Woodmont, Annie says the dump would not have happened if the single party of the township committee did their job properly, right? You need to own land in order to, file a builder's remedy lawsuit, right? So Frank and Ben started this fight. Michael and Annette were complicit and going along until Frank and Ben got in. We've seen this taking of credit, and we are all about cutting through just that narrative. We're about getting stuff done. And Tom, when you look at it, getting stuff done is stopping a project on a contaminated site.
and let's
Yeah.
compare this round 3 to what happened in round 4 after Frank and Ben got on the committee. The process was not even 100%. Pick a higher number. That was better. So first of all, they formed a committee on affordable housing that the community can participate in. I believe Frank Secmonde actually chaired that committee. So that brought the public into it. They created a planning board subcommittee, information sessions, and it was a fully transparent process. Ultimately,
I think that they've been more opposed to sort of settling or agreeing to the affordable housing plan. But that may require Millburn to be more litigious in opposing it, is my take on the issue. To fight, the lawsuits that we may eventually face. And just as a voter and a resident, you have this kind of just rationale for the affordable housing obligation. But real estate is changing so dramatically, in my view, that, with the changing commercial environment in New York City, when a lot of new commercial space is coming up for potential residential redevelopment, the development of so much space between our towns, suburban towns like ours, and the city in East Orange and Irvington and Newark, that the rationale for the Mount Laurel decision that towns like Short Hills must have multifamily housing is really questionable. And my hope is that it would eventually be changed through litigation or legislation. I don't really understand the continuing rationale of the Mount Laurel doctrine.
I mean, look, this is
Yeah.
there's many towns that are exempt, right? Whether it be, all of the cities that are around us that have, and we're not against affordable housing. Let's make that very clear. We want smart, creative solutions, right? That include, mindfulness for the schools and our utilities and our first responders, right? But our assemblywomen voted for this legislation last year, which has made this even more difficult. It comes from the top, and
And to me, this whole issue, to me, it was about getting economically disadvantaged children access to better education, right? They could afford to live in our town, so they could afford to go to our schools, which were higher ranked. I don't hear us talking about that anymore. It's all about the housing. I feel like politicians have hijacked the issue to reward developers and really just it's all about the development. It's not about
the kid.
how do we educate those kids,
Yeah.
if that was the original intent of this whole effort.
Right, right. Well, so let's move on to a couple other issues. First, related issues, obviously, to the development of multifamily housing. I think the most immediate concern for many people is just the traffic. I mean, my wife and I moved here just about 20 years ago. And I would say when I would drive across town at 5 p.m., it was a lot easier than it is now. I mean, I hit so much traffic. I'm in Wyoming, but going down Glen over Lackawanna, if I want to go to the other side of town to Giro or to wherever, I'm so much more likely to hit a bunch of traffic. And I don't really understand how, there's all of those new units coming online on Millburn Avenue that are in Springfield, but are on Millburn Avenue near like Wine Library
Yeah,
and that area.
Metropolitan.
That's about 300 families going in there. There's 50 families or 50 units coming online that are right in town at the intersection where what Essex comes into Millburn. I forget the name of the development, but
The small one, the Hearth by
the
police and
Hearth,
fire
right? I think
department.
there's 50 or 60 units there. And then at the Annie Says property, there's about 170 units.
Yeah.
Right. And Annie Says is then we see the new garage that's about 4 or 5 stories. And they're going to have another 150, 160 units, I believe, in there.
I believe. Yep.
Collectively, that's almost 1,000 units on just what is Millburn Avenue that aren't online yet.
And I think another point to talk about in round 4, where Frank had a stronger hand in negotiating, there are 4 developments identified to meet our obligation. One is in downtown, I believe, above the Moonshine. The other 3 are not in downtown. They're in other areas. So you can successfully negotiate on these. Round 3, we think they invited the developers in and wanted it in our downtown.
I think that, well, there's some of the, the justification, it has to be near the train station and mass transit.
Near transportation.
The
Upton has bus lines.
There are bus stops, and that was a big consideration. This whole process, right, whether soup to nuts, led by our Vote for Millburn team, has really made an impact, right? And it will make an impact for, our posterity, right? That is where developments could be suited, right? Where it's near transportation and near jobs. Think about the mall. Talk about traffic. Frank had proposed a townwide traffic study, right? And we've seen, unfortunately, there was a head-on collision, cars going the wrong way on Essex Street in front of the Annie Says property. We see the Woodland Road property where the sidewalk was moved to the opposite side of the road on former parking spaces, right? So that new students, first day of school, and commuters have to do a double crosswalk, right, when they normally would be on one sidewalk. So traffic and pedestrian safety are key to our campaign.
And not to mention,
hey guys, I got a tip for you. If you'll just run on curing the 3-way stop at
by the library you're talking.
Right, Lackawanna and
Glen, yeah.
Every day, that's a nightmare, and it backs up to Brook Lake Drive. There needs to be a stoplight in there that's adjustable by time of day, to allow traffic to flow through there. Right now, nobody knows how to navigate a three-way stop.
I remember when there was no stop sign there,
Oh.
right? When there was only one stop sign coming
Yeah.
off of Lackawanna. And, baby steps, right? So now I would agree with you. We have to look at that intersection really, really strategically. I mean, there was unfortunately a horrible incident on Lackawanna several years ago with a speeding car that was coming down. We have to really focus on this townwide traffic study, and we have to really focus on these. I just want to talk for a minute about public safety, pedestrian safety and public safety with the developments at Woodland Road, right? So just to stick on that for a second, there's tape, right, at one of the recent township committee meetings where it's been stated that the developers should be given leeway over the residents, right? That's the theoretic argument, right? Romano has said that, clearly. We have to prioritize our students. And that's one of the big pieces too. We have Tour de Millburn coming up, which has been rescheduled, right? We have to focus on safe routes to school. Do safe routes mean adding 2 crosswalks on one of the busiest roads, Chatham Road, right? People speeding down as commuters to go to the Short Hills train station, or speeding downtown Millburn or Glen Ave. So that is really critical with traffic. And number 2 is other modes, whether it be buses, whether
I was going to say that agreement was negotiated for the sidewalk to be kept there.
It was.
And then somehow it was given away to the developers in a non-transparent manner that they could take away that sidewalk and do this pedestrian setup that Jamie has rightly identified as a traffic hazard.
Yeah,
pedestrian safety issue.
I mean, I think traffic is one of the things that, is really high on people's priority list, and every neighborhood has their own traffic issue. Also, get me a right on red off of Essex onto Old Short, okay? You know where Essex is, across from the pizza place, or next to we're right across from Common Lot. At that intersection with Common Lot, I sit there all the time and I want to take a right on red, and I can't do it. But I usually do it anyway, and I hope I don't get a ticket. Give me a right on red there, and you get my vote, okay?
Look, we need to really deeply look at a lot of these intersections, and I really think the ones you've identified, in particular Glen Ave, many of the turns in town, right? You go into town, it's not a friendly environment to drive, right? If you're out of town, which is why there was a head-on collision going the wrong way in front of the Annie Says development. Now, in front of the Annie Says development, there's no sidewalk because there's a development. There, is limited lanes all over town. All over town, we're seeing this continuous broken record. And so, also, whether it be other safe routes to schools, prioritizing buses, biking, we need to be conscious of each other. We need to be good neighbors. We need to be good stewards of the town, right? So that means slowing down. We had unfortunate incidents by South Mountain School, and frankly, in every school district. Chris and I both have served on the Board of Education. We know how important it is, and also being a student myself, Chris, having children, safety is so important, and it's a huge part of education. Right? We heard about people riding around town without wearing helmets on bikes and electric bikes. That's unacceptable. And whatever we need to do to encourage and provide an education program, this is all under the auspices of pedestrian safety and traffic, and just being a more functional community.
All right, guys, we're about half an hour into it. Let's move on. We can talk about traffic in schools,
sure,
or affordable housing all night, but flooding is a pet peeve or an issue of mine. And I, like a lot of people, we had a flood in I think it was 2012, Memorial or Labor Day weekend. I think it was then 2022, almost 10 years to the day, another flood hit, wiped out the same streets, same neighborhood, same places in downtown. When are we going to fix that? Because the next flood, people are going to be really pissed if South Mountain gets wiped out and downtown gets wiped out again, and nothing's been changed.
Well, you know what? We've seen the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee come forward in a bipartisan manner, right? We saw, unfortunately, the politicization, making it political after Hurricane Ida. And, I was downtown on Hurricane Ida. I partnered with Joanna Parker Lentz, McCole Richter. I partnered with the Scouts. I went down I went down. I was one of the first people there.
Well, you're going to be going
And
down again unless something's be
and
cleaning out those
no,
basements
and it's the
again.
truth. It's the truth. You see these things, you see these basements, you're carrying people's things out. So we've seen real engineers and really qualified people on a bipartisan basis come together. You know, Ben and Frank put on qualified people, right? You know, we need a number
Do
of
we think
immediate
the town's
actions.
safer now? Has anything been done that's made it safer? Or anything that's it's been
Yes.
implemented to
Yeah.
deepen the riverbed? Or,
It
I mean,
has.
that
I mean,
Fudders store is, sort of a chokehold there. I think it's
we need to invest in our retention systems. We need to invest in, everything upstream will affect us eventually, right?
right,
So we
right.
need to pursue, restoring state and federal funds, which Chris and I will continue to work on. We need to increase rainfall retention standards and be really strict about runoff. And we have to really empower the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee to propose legislation, to propose and ask for funding. We need a dedicated line item, right? And we need a long-term plan, right? We have to focus on long-term planning. That's the biggest issue, I think, one of the biggest, I don't want to number, but that our township is facing, right? And Chris, I just can't believe that things come so piecemeal,
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
the Orange Reservoir bypass helps with smaller storms, but it isn't a comprehensive solution. As Jamie said, we need more longer term planning here. We need the same attention that other municipalities receive. Hoboken got 236 million in state and federal funding, while we got nothing. We send a lot of money up to our county and to our state. What do we get back for it? Frank has put forward an ordinance to double stormwater retention requirements for new developers. Jamie was mentioning that, how we
Yeah.
need to increase that for developers to trap the rainwater.
We have to focus on these they're not even low-hanging fruit, but these core fruits and really fund them, right? Ida was 4 years ago, right? And we had a number of quick rainfalls in the last 2 months, and my neighbors and my family even, is thinking, oh no, what is this, right? We're
Right.
over communicating on our town systems, but that's not a solution. We need funding. We need good representation. Frank and Ben were really, really, strategic with that committee, and we also, as Chris mentioned, we need to get our funding right. We give, $50 million to Essex County, and we need a return. We need a key return, right? All that's coming, from upstream is not our, is Essex County, is other municipalities. And the more
All right.
development creates impervious, sorry, cut me off, but impervious coverage. You have to have solutions, and that's what we're going to bring.
All right. Let's try to do another couple, like 5 minutes, basically. Maybe a couple minutes on crime. Uh, I don't
Yeah.
know, just my feeling is like maybe last year there was so many car thefts for a while. People really focused on it. Maybe the attention's gone down a little bit recently. I'm not sure, but that's another issue I know people really, you know, respond to about our town. Like, some people just get, I mean, I've heard horror stories. People wake up in the middle of the night, people in their house looking for keys, and then their car's gone and
Horrible.
traumatizes the whole family. Um,
So, take this.
Yeah, I would say 2 or 3 years ago is when it peaked. And it so happens that Ben and Frank were elected and this stuff started going down. I believe car thefts are down 60%, home invasions are down 40%. They held the police accountable. They actually helped the police install new technology, deploy their forces better. The number of patrols were increased. There are so many things that they did. So even though it's not top of mind issue, we cannot take our foot off the pedal. We need to be even more diligent to have, to me, if there's one home break-in or one car theft, it's
Too
one
many.
too many.
Yeah.
So until we get those numbers, we're going to keep pressing on this issue.
And we need to empower the police. We need to make sure that they feel empowered and make sure that they feel that we have their backs. And we do. We do. We have the most impressive police force I have met. And there's been the push for community engagement. And these are my best friends, whether they be some of them were my dare officers, right? I see them around town. I see them at Oscars. I see them all. We need to build that community spirit, and Chris and I are part of that. We want people to feel engaged, and listened to when they come to the podium, when they have community meetings, right? A lot of this spurred from a lot of community meetings that, that Frank and Ben put forward. The staffing study. You want to talk about the staffing study?
Yeah, I mean that's the way we should be doing things. We need to get professional help, get good data. I agree. Hearing the anecdotal feedback and what our residents are saying is very important. But until we take a professional approach at this, um, yeah, that's what we need to do. So the police staffing study revealed that we needed to add more resources. This was a year-long intensive study that looked at the police department from top to bottom. So that's the kind of professionalism that Frank and Ben have brought and that will continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's close it out on party politics, which has been in the news a little bit. There's a new commission, I believe, that's being formed to focus on whether Millburn Township Committee elections will be nonpartisan. You guys are running as Republicans. We're a largely kind of liberal town. How do you deal with that, in this partisan environment? I would say you're kind of running against brand, or you got a brand stigma. I'm an independent / conservative, so it's not a stigma with me, but I feel like it's a stigma in this town that has sort of, in this environment that's more partisan, just like writes off the R.
Yeah, I mean, you're right with that. I think we need to start with by recognizing that these issues are not partisan, right? We just talked flooding, traffic, crime. Which one of those is a Republican problem or a Democrat problem, right? We need to be neighbors. We need to work together to come to common sense solutions. We need to change the mindset of the township committee.
Yep.
Right? Instead of kind of sniping each other for partisan advantage, let's work together. We both served on the Board of Education. That is a nonpartisan body. I know my colleagues on the Board of Education currently. I know some of them are very partisan. We don't talk about that. We focus on where we can build common ground. As president, I've been able to take down the temperature, focus on the issues where we can build consensus and deliver strong solutions. I think we can do that in Township Committee. And this whole commission, this was the vote for Millburn platform. Ben and Frank pushed this through. Romano and Cohen voted against putting this on the ballot.
And Chris and I fully support nonpartisan local government. We will give that commitment today. We will give it tomorrow, and we'll give it when we're on the dais. We fully support nonpartisan local government. We need to give our residents a say in how they're governed and not necessarily with a label. There's too many distractions that we're seeing come out.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want DC or Trenton dictating what we do in our town.
No.
So we got to keep away those politics and just focus on our issues.
Why are people trying to turn neighbors against neighbors? We're seeing, things in the past, such as, stopping Republican extremism. We all live in the same community. We all bleed the same Millburn blue and white, right? And growing up in this town, I've seen how things have shifted. I've seen how, not as many people want to gather in Taylor Park for an event. Not as many people want to get together and have a casual conversation. They want to hide behind the comments section. We are everywhere. We're going to continue to be everywhere. And that's what I'm really proud about, because I want, and Chris wants, right? We want to continue to keep this an exciting community. This vitriol, this divide, the R and the D does not belong on the township committee level. And as a result, we fully support the Charter Commission's duty, and we will accept the recommendations.
All right, guys, I can't believe it's been like over 45 minutes already. It seems like about 10.
But thanks right?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for participating. And just my own 2 cents. I love it when local candidates get out there and show their face online and sort of participate in the local give and take on Facebook or other social media, because it's weird. Like, I kind of have the sense that at the governor race level, like Mikey Sherrill and Jack Citarelli, they do a lot of social media and they're accessible, and I can kind of get a feel for them. But often for the local races, like, I don't know why, but some of the candidates really don't sort of show up and expose themselves, or maybe, chit chat on the Facebook pages and kind of get involved. They want to be aloof from that. But I don't think that's for for me, I don't think that's qualified to run for
Well,
local office.
Yep, you're going to see us around. Like if you haven't seen our face on a billboard, we're going door to door. We're going to touch almost every door in this town before the election is over. So if you haven't seen us, maybe you're driving with your eyes closed, which is a concern.
And
Hey, you got a lot of lawn signs up. I think you're doing well.
thank
Best
you.
of
And
luck,
Tom,
guys. Thanks for
we
your
just
dedication, past
One
and
last-
future,
one
to
more-
the town. One more point. What do you want?
One more point. We challenge Romano and Cohen to a debate before the vote by mail ballots go out. We've made ourselves available. We are available. We currently have a debate scheduled for later in the month, but to give the fair shot to all the residents who vote by mail, who early vote, who vote on election day, and those who still need to register to vote, we challenge our opponents and we are available.
Yeah,
All right,
we should have been
when
doing
does
the
vote by
debate
mail go out?
tonight.
Just after the 20th. Just a
Okay.
couple days after the 20th, because the Charter Commission, there was a revision. We've made ourselves available. Our opponents have rejected that and want to do it later in the month. But we are game, and we are game. We are around town. I hope to see everybody at Rocktoberfest. They originally Saturday, September 13th. So let's debate. Find Chris and I. Go to voteformillburn.com. You can find all of our information. Shoot us a text, call us, send us an email. You'll see me at Oscars most days of the week, and you'll see me in Taylor Park almost as often.
All right, excellent. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Good luck, and I'll invite Romano and Cohen to do an interview as well, since you guys reached out and I gave you the platform. So I'll see if they want to do it as well. I'll convey that message. But thanks a lot, and good luck with your anniversary, Chris. Hope you guys enjoy the evening. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Vote for Millburn.
All right.
Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.